really, they don't have the internet access, they don't have a lot of access to different stuff, right? Different resources. So I feel that like then the exposure is the main challenge for the kids. They don't have a lot of role models to look up to. They don't know of a lot of different pathways, a lot of opportunities that are out there, and they kind of like grow in a bubble, right? And they become very comfortable in the bubble, right? They don't want to come out also, right? So I would say that for rural areas, it's more about like bridging opportunities, bridging access and all. And you would see that fellows who are placed in these schools, a lot of their initiatives are those, right? Like, hey, let's create a STEM lab in your school, right? And then they go like, what's STEM? And then you bring a 3D printer, you actually show the kid, you pique their interest so that they start to be curious, right? They start to go like, hey, but like what else is out there, right? How can I tap into that? You see them bringing their students out for competitions when the school has never been sent for a competition before, because they're just so outskirt that it just doesn't make sense for them to travel, right? And the kids would come by boat, right? They come by boats, they travel by boats, by bus, by everything, just to come for this competition. So you see fellows sort of bridging that kind of access. When it comes to the urban community, and I think for me, my own personal experience also is that maybe the communities there also face more instability in their lives, I feel, due to urban pressure, because their parents are working. Most of the time both parents are working, and there's not a lot of attention back home, right? So the kids get involved in other influence. I mean, they're very easily influenced, and now I think online is the biggest thing, right? So anything that they see online is their number one feeder of like information, and they have access to all of that, right? See, they got smartphones, they got TikTok, so it's more exposure, but not moderated and not moderated, right? I've had students who, for example, had to drop out from class because they had to go and sell nasi lemak by the road, just to support their parents, right? I had students whose parents didn't have enough money to pump petrol, so they couldn't go to school, right? And I thought like, wow, that's a very different kind of issue, even though they were staying like right in the city, right in KL, right? And then you also have issues, like things like mental health, right? That was very big among my students, right? And I think a lot of the things that they watch online does affect them, and they don't know how to regulate them, and they don't have an adult who's there to sort of supervise, right? So you see this more commonly, this kind of issues within the urban community. And then a very different set of issues within the rural. I think in the urban community, a lot of teachers act as very as emotional support, and as really as that champion for kids. I think just being there for them, it's not so much about getting them into another competition, not so much about all of that, but just really being the mentor that walks with them, and journeys with them and really champions them. I think that's very meaningful for a child living in an urban community.
Thank you for these thoughtful responses. To wrap up the interview, I'll now hand it over to our final interviewer, which is Dinora.
Thank you. I would like to ask a bit more about your personal experience working with students. So my first question will be, what has been the most challenging moment you have faced while working with students, and how did you overcome it?
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think of this, and I'm like, wow, everything seems challenging. I don't know which one was the most. I think for me, mostly it was having a system that felt like it was not really supporting the child also, right? When you're a teacher, I mean, your performance and everything is also based on the grades of your students, right? And that's why then you see a lot of methods of grilling and getting them to memorize, and things like that. And those were very common. That was how I was brought up too, right? And then I guess then when you really, or you truly ask yourself, like, if I really care, what would I do, right? What would I do differently, right? And obviously then you put in a lot more effort. You will, you go all out for your students. Like you've seen teachers building like the most amazing games to teach their kids, right? You see them, like I say, championing for them, bringing them out and things like that. But I realized that it's very hard when you're in a system that doesn't recognize that or doesn't reward that, right? And it can be very demotivating as a teacher, and it's not sustainable also for the teacher, because if you're trying to push against a system that's just pushing back against them, what's 1 to 100,000, right? So I think that has been one of the most challenging things that I think I felt very deeply. So for example, like I was in a school that was just that was, I think, okay, just to be a bit more confidential, that was just a bit more particular in how the teachers were doing their pedagogy and their 21st century learning. So I had a lot of lesson observations and things like that, right? But the one thing I really cared about was that every class I would ask my kids, how are you doing today, right? Like, how is everybody feeling? What's the mood level that we're like dealing with today, right? But in the rubrics of where I'm being observed, none of it mentions like student well-being, right? So that is considered then like a waste of time, right? Like, why are you doing that when you should be focusing on all these other things, right? But to me, that was very important. And to me, that felt like, regardless, I wanted to be a teacher who cared, right? Who cared about them as a person and not the academics. So had a lot of pushback, had a lot of like you're just being graded as not a great teacher, when great teachers come in very different perspectives. So yeah, I think that was probably one of the most challenging things I faced as a teacher.
Thank you for your answers. So next question is, what does a typical day look like for someone working in your role?
Okay, so just wanted to clarify, would you all like to know like a teacher's role or like my role now? Like my role now? Okay. So what I currently do is I work as the Alumni Impact Manager at Teach for Malaysia. And what does that mean, right? So remember I told you all about the movement that Teach for Malaysia is trying to build, right? We develop leaders and we give them this two-year experience in schools. We coach them, we support them. Then they graduate to be alumni. And then what happens? Okay, so basically the theory of change is that the change happens with the alumni community. They are supposed to then be leaders in their own ways, right? Whether it's in schools, whether you continue as a teacher, right? Whether you are leading a nonprofit, whether you are working in a nonprofit. There are so many ways to get involved. Some of them are in the minister's office. Okay, then they can create better policies, right? So we want this movement to grow. So basically what I do is I think about this community and I help to build this community to ensure that, hey, one, they still feel supported even after the fellowship, that if they ever need resources, they need help, they need to be connected to somebody, they can always come to us and we'll see who we have and what we have, right? We are also trying to see how we can gather, and be a bit more strategic, right? It's not about everybody doing your own thing, but it's about like how we coming together and seeing what we all already have and using that to our advantage, right? How can we come together to be a louder voice, right, for the children that we serve and that we have seen, right? So a lot of my role, what does my day-to-day look like? I think it's a lot between either talking to fellows, also getting to know them, and getting to see like, hey, how has the fellowship been for you? And what are you making sense of this? And what's next for you? So if, let's say, one of them is thinking that, hey, I really am thinking of starting my own nonprofit. Can I connect you then to somebody who has already started their own nonprofit, right? And maybe you guys can help, like they can help you, right? So I can do that. But then I also talk to alumni as well to see what kind of support that they need and how the org can support them. Also, what are they currently doing and how can we highlight that, right? How can we get them on board also to see who we can connect them with and how they can work better together. So a lot of it is very relationship building. But at the moment, I also co-founded my own nonprofit, and that is called RED, like the color, and stands for Reimagine Education, right? So that one focuses a lot on refugee education. And so that was something that I was particularly interested in and like really championing for. So it's been 4 years since I've been running this with another job on the side. So a lot of my day to day is like managing that and also working a full-time job with Teach for Malaysia.
Thank you so much. So last question would be, what advice would you give to young people who want to make real impact through education or community work?
Yeah. Go for it. Do it. Take that first step. Someone once said to me first, right? I was dead set. I was like, I am not becoming a teacher. I was dead set on not becoming a teacher. And I thought that like, yeah, teaching was not me, you know. But someone told me to take the leap, and I'm really glad that I did. I'm glad I took that chance to explore and see whether it's for me, right? But I think in the longer run also, I feel that it shouldn't be viewed as a job, because sometimes I think in this day and era, right, we see a lot of nonprofits, we see a lot of social work, and it's a norm, right? Your parents won't entirely kill you if you say, I want to go work in a nonprofit. They understand. They say like, now, yes, nonprofits can pay, right? But I think the moment that we start to see it as a job, is when the mission sort of fails, right? Because when you want to be in this kind of impact work, you need to make sure that you are working towards killing your job, making sure that your job doesn't exist one day, right? Because you already found the solution, right? You already solved the issue, and that should be your main motivation, your main goal. And the moment it becomes like, no, this is just my everyday living, right, of somebody's issues, that's when it gets messy, right? Yeah. So I would say go for it. Try it if you can. You know, in whatever capacity. It doesn't always have to be very big. You know, there are little ways to get involved. Do that. See if it's for you, and if it is for you, then I hope that you find something to keep you reminded again of like why you started and why you're doing this. Because I think you're gonna need a lot of those reminders to be able to last and pace yourself out in a sector like this. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your experiences and advices with us. We really appreciate your time and your effort. This concludes our interview. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Can we have a little photo time? We have
Sure. Thanks for having me.
picture.
Okay.
For me, I'm trying to find the best angle for everyone. And 1, 2, 3.
Oh, y'all wanna do the TFM hand?
You can do that. There.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
All right.
Thank you
so much, Miss Hilda.
No problem. I hope that was helpful. Nice. Okay. Very nice meeting all of you.
It was my wish.
Yeah. Hope to cross paths soon also.
Of course.